Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by the members of oldsschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with manicexpression.com, the home of an incoherent ramble. Here our favorite British hottie talk about many things from James Bond to Twilight. Welcome aboard to Old School Lane Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I'm here today with a very special guest coming all the way from jolly old UK and whatnot. So please, everybody, welcome aboard Kieron, a.k.a. Gurning Chimp from Manic Expression. Welcome aboard.
Hi Patricia, it's great to be here.
And today we're going to be talking about British television programs, more specifically kids shows and any particular shows that you should be able to check out, and the transition between certain British shows when it came to America. So the intro that we just played right now is from a kids show called Blue Peter. For those who don't know, can you please tell us what it's about?
It's the best way to describe it in a magazine show, where each week presenters will go out and talk about a certain subject. They'll talk to any interesting people they meet. It's sort of hard to describe, really, but yeah, I think a magazine show is the best way to describe it.
So sort of like Sesame Street in a way.
Kind of, but more aimed for the kids, really, because they're like talking about and talk about things like kids jumping. And I remember at one point they even were teaching kids how to build barbecues.
Barbecues, really?
Yeah.
Are we talking about like grills, or are we talking about like barbecues that you do outside?
Proper barbecues. They were putting bricks down and they were saying, "Oh, you can do this, you need to do that," and it was quite controversial at the time. But it's funny when you look back at it.
Oh, wow. That would be really cool to teach kids how to do a barbecue, but, I'm sure I can understand why it was controversial, the fact that kids might have gotten burned or being too young to cook unless you were with a parent, so I can understand that.
Yeah.
So, how long did the show last?
It's still going.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's 50 years now.
How long?
A good 50 years.
50 years. That's almost just as long as Sesame Street.
Yeah, it's a massive British institution now. The theme is really famous, and everyone remembers who the characters were when they were kids, and everyone had their favourites.
Do you have a favourite character?
Favourite presenter? I'm trying to think. I always liked Kate Hill. He was pretty cool.
Cool. And what was his character description like?
Well, she was more marketed as sort of the action girl, but she was there to pretty much get the dads along. I mean, every incarnation of Blue Peter had some form of young woman for dads to get involved in. Like at the minute, the girl is Helen, I think the name is, but she actually swam the Amazon. I think she did.
Oh,
she
nice.
swam like the Amazon. Or she moved down. She did something else.
Wow, sounds like a really cool character.
Yeah.
So basically, Blue Peter has been, as far as being one of the longest kids shows in Great Britain. Would you care to share other fantastic kids shows that either used to show or are still showing today?
I'd also like to talk about Grange Hill, because it was revolutionary at the time. It was because it was a drama series about a secondary school, and it focused on the trials and tribulations of being a secondary school student. So, of course, you had the usual stuff like exams and bullying and things like that. But then it also went into proper serious social issues, like one infamous character known as Dano. He actually became a heroin addict in the show, And the most infamous scene involving him is Richter had an overdose. His best friend found the body in a toilet, and that basically kicked the Just Say No campaign into over. Nancy Reagan, I believe, invited the cast over to the White House because of this.
Yes, I remember that. It's sort of like, I remember that Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan, they did like No Drugs campaign in which they had all the classic 80s cartoon characters like, the Muppet Babies, and they had Bugs Bunny, and they had Garfield and Alf. I remember something like that, so I guess it would be kind of like that equivalent for the UK.
Oh, yeah, but this one was actually proper hardcore. It showed the effects. It showed you how taking drugs can really mess you up. I mean, seriously, if it didn't mess kids up, I'm surprised.
Yeah. Well, as far as I know, as of now, we don't really worry about the drugs problems anymore because, as far as we know, when it comes to certain drugs, they're legal now. So, it's almost as legal as having them for breakfast. So in a way, we all win.
Yeah. Of course, as time went on, the problems changed. Like, quite a few episodes based around agency. I mean, even the new series, before the downfall of Grange Hill, they were focused on stories such as internet paedophilia. All that's completely relevant to kids. And the thing is, after 22 years of running, the BBC decided, Grange Hill's not relevant anymore. It's not relevant. And they decided to try to make it relevant.
Wow.
And the last 3 years of Grange Hill were an absolute cringe fest.
Ouch.
Yeah, trying to be down with the kids, and but it just didn't work. And I don't know how you can make a show like Grange Hill relevant, but much to do it.
Yeah, it's really hard. When it comes to transitioning to certain shows, especially kids shows, it's really hard to transition over time. Especially with the topic that you were used to be discussing at the time, or the people who used to present it, in which they focus on like certain topics. It's like the equivalent of teaching kids about polio, and then, nobody would even know about it because the cure's already been found like 40 years ago. So, yeah, I can understand something like that in which it, trying to make an old show, quote unquote, modern again. It's just nothing more than a cringe fest. I can understand that.
Yeah.
So, as far as I know, I don't think we have any displeasure of having that yet. But the only one that probably has come somewhat close to that is obviously when Paul Rubens decided to resurrect the Pee Wee Herman show on Broadway and on the stage show, and that worked out fantastically. But as for failures, I don't think so. As far as I know, Yo Gabba Gabba done that a couple of times, but they're still on the air, and apparently they sold like billions of tickets, so who knows, maybe in 30 years from now, maybe when Sesame Street is, kind of being canceled, or maybe when we have something so obscure, like maybe the Big Comfy Couch or Today's Special, and they try to pull off something like that, it'll be extremely awkward because those pieces have not aged well in today's standards.
Oh no, it's always the same. You do get some shows that like stay timeless, but some things are just really dated now.
Oh, absolutely. I can commend a kid's show for teaching lessons, but there are some things in which it's dated, like maybe the camera work, or maybe the settings, or maybe the way the characters speak, or maybe the way that they portray themselves. It's very hard to do something timeless. Like, if you watch older episodes of Sesame Street, that's a bad example, because you have something like the cinematography, and you have some of the celebrity guests, in which, they would have something like maybe an old football player, or a celebrity that nobody knows about, or something like that, so... Exactly, there. Yeah, it's just like introducing a kid. It's like, okay, we're gonna watch Sesame Street, and then the kid's like watching maybe somebody who has like really poofy hair. It's like, mommy, daddy, why does that woman have like curly Cheetos on her head? It's like, no, that's what the hair looked like back then.
Why did Captain Falcon her?
Exactly. Yeah, so it's not every day in which you can introduce a kid's show that is timeless. It's kind of like you have to be able to present something in a way that it's relevant. The lessons can still work. I wouldn't say so much as, animation is also one thing. The way it presents itself, light on the celebrities, definitely, because looking down at the line 10 or 20 years from now is like, oh, we gotten Madonna. And like a few years later, it's like nobody gives a shit.
Well, no, actually, Madonna's one of those that has actually succeeded so long. I mean,
maybe Madonna's a bad example. Well, okay, let's say Tiffany.
Oh, I think we're alone now.
Yeah, that's the one. I think we're alone now. Yeah, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good example.
I was going to say like Avril Lavigne or something.
Avril Lavigne, yes, Avril Lavigne, or maybe 3LW.
Oh, I've never even heard of that one.
Yeah. Or maybe, who knows, maybe 30 years along the line, people will see Justin Bieber, and they'll be like, who's that? And it's like, oh, nobody, honey. Just somebody who was big back then, but now has turned into a disgrace. Actually, he was a disgrace even when he was on TV.
Yeah.
Like last night's episode of SNL. It was so unbelievably, uncomfortably awkward. He tried to be all funny and stuff, but I think that the SNL cast had to overcompensate due to the fact that he was practically useless.
No, you don't actually get SNL in England.
Yeah.
I mean, no, we can't even look it online because like international royalty, they block us out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. We've gotten to off topic, so let's see, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, another thing that we were discussing was let's see, British cultures. When it comes to not only just the TV shows but also the movies. If for those who have been looking at the site, they probably already know by now that you are a James Bond fan.
Just a bit.
Just a little bit. Well, when did you first get introduced to James Bond?
When I was 6 years old, the Living Daylights was on the telly, and my mum says, you like Inspector Gadget, you might actually like James Bond, give it a go. So I did and loved it.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, I guess Inspector Gadget would kind of be a similarity, even though that Inspector Gadget was more like a kiddie version of Get Smart mixed with James Bond. So, yeah, I could kind of see that.
Also, Living Daylights is probably one of the more serious James Bond films as well. So it's different to Inspector Gadget, that one.
Yeah. James Bond is more competent and more likely to save the world than Inspector Gadget. If he didn't have his niece, then we all be screwed up as we know it.
Oh, God, yeah.
Exactly. So, you saw James Bond, and was this something that you shared with your friends, or was this kind of like you liked it alone and you just enjoy watching the other James Bond movies on your own?
It depends, really. I'm mostly into like the Timothy Dalton and the Sean Connery ones. Any friend who liked James Bond films were going to do the latest Pierce Brosnan film. I mean, at the time, everyone was getting into Tomorrow Never Died, and especially GoldenEye N64 come out, everyone was playing that.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I mean, this was before Halo's Boys and Girls. This was during a time in which, 4 kids can be able to play a first-person shooter, right during a time in which you only had, like, one player when you're playing Doom. And this game, I remember this game was, like, huge around middle school. I had a friend who had a Nintendo 64, and he would invite some of us to play this game called GoldenEye, and everybody was just so unbelievably hooked with this game. I mean, I don't think he even saw the GoldenEye the movie. I think he just picked up the game and just played it.
I remember a lot of the time now.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think most people, when regarded about GoldenEye, they seem to remember the game more than they remember the movie.
Yeah, especially true. I mean, there was a whole culture around it in the UK at least. I mean, there was always like, you can't play as odd jobs for pussies because of course he's the shortest character, so he's harder to hit.
Yeah, and Odd Job, everybody knows that he is so cheap.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Yeah, so if anybody plays as Odd Job, I will hate you.
You playing as Odd Job is the easiest way to get everyone after you.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why if there was ever a GoldenEye 64 tournament, video game tournament, Odd Job will definitely be banned. Yeah, so now discussing about the majority of British television shows, there were a couple of British television shows that transitioned from Great Britain to America, such as The Office and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and Whose Line Is It Anyway and what have you. So what would you say is the difference between the original British television shows and their American counterparts?
It's definitely the sense of humour, because I find the British versions tend to have sort of more subtle, sarcastic humour. This is especially evident in Whose Line Is It Anyway. The UK version was fairly quiet. It didn't get as raucous as the American version.
I cannot imagine that.
But yeah, the American version does tend to like sort of have a bigger budget. It tends to sort of eat the joke on the head sometimes.
Right.
But it just depends really on what it is. I mean, like, I prefer the American Office to the British Office because I just find it funnier. I don't like Ricky Gervais at all.
Oh yes, we were discussing about that in the Manic Expression digression session when I was bringing up that they were going to make a Muppets 2, and I said Ricky Gervais was going to be in it, and let's just say that it wasn't pretty.
No, but yeah, I mean it's the same with Whose Line Is It Anyway as well, because I found that the British version tended to end the sketches and the skits too early. It didn't let the actors get warmed up, didn't let them get into the flow, if you will. Whereas with the American version, they do get into the flow and they do get really raucous sometimes.
Yes, I recall on that because I was watching both the British and the American version just to do a comparison, and yeah, you're right. There are some moments in which the sketches and the improv get cut off a little bit too early. And also, what I noticed in the British version, there are some people that are, really good, and then there are some people who, I feel is not either utilized or I feel like they should have even been there in the first place.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think.
Yeah, that's exactly who I was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, but Pat Flattery is always good. So is Paul Merton. He's brilliant in him.
Yeah. And now the American version of The Office, a lot of people know about that. You have Steve Carell, and you have all these other characters that acting, and then you have like the British version in which you had Ricky Gervais in it. So besides the casting and besides the humor, is it all pretty much the same, or is it a little different?
Oh, it's very different. Again, The Office UK, the British version of The Office, tended to go for a more sort of David Brent is an asshole, Tim, and more awkward sense of humour, I believe. For me, it did work. It did like Curb Your Enthusiasm, which has pretty much the same style of comedy. I just found Larry David much more likeable. The American version tended to be like a traditional sitcom, really, like joke. But I prefer that in this case.
I think it made the pace a lot more fluid.
Yeah, because that's the thing I noticed about the British Office. They tended to just stop, just here and there, and that annoyed me, especially considering they're in every scene with an awkward silence, and it got on my nerves.
I hate those.
Yeah. Just like, end the another way. There's many ways you can end a scene.
Let's just wait for a few seconds and maybe something will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that, especially especially when it comes to shows in which they're just waiting for something to happen. You're just waiting there, and then it's like waiting for the next scene to transition. It's like, what's going on? Waiting, TikTok.
Do something.
There you go. So yeah, I've another thing that I mentioned before was that one of Norman Lear's spin-offs, Maude, was actually going to be transitioning over to Great Britain as well. For some of you who don't know, Maude is actually Edith's sister from All in the Family, and she's played by Bea Arthur, and she was very talkative, and she was very assertive, and she wasn't afraid to speak out her opinions about anything. She even stood out to Archie a couple of times, which is why Archie absolutely hates her. I can understand that. Him growing up during the Great Depression and working all his life, a woman's supposed to be silent, to cook and clean, but not Maude. They were actually going to have a British version of that, but that was scrapped pretty quickly for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe because maybe having an assertive woman was pretty much an unheard of sort of thing. What do you think?
I just think that maybe the funding fell through. Because pretty much with Rome, which was funded by the British, the Italians, the Americans, and all sorts of different companies. But as for Maude, All in the Family was around the 80s, wasn't it?
It showed itself around like the 70s.
Right.
Yeah, it was around the 70s, and it was around around the late 60s and early 70s, because it was during a time in which they would reference things like the Vietnam War, and they would reference things like, for example, Archie had a next-door neighbor who was the Jeffersons, and which eventually they would get their own spin-off. And, he didn't feel really comfortable with him, especially in one scene in which he sits on Archie's chair, so... it was around the late 60s and early to mid 70s that came out. And Maude would probably have came out like around the 70s. Because, Norman Lear has known for having his characters have spin-offs, like the Jeffersons and like Maude.
Yeah, I'm not sure that could have been found, because, to say it was the 80s, that was when Channel 4 was coming in, and that was showing a lot of American stuff, like most famous Cheers.
Yeah.
And, thinking if it was then during the 80s, more likely like some protest stopped it or something, killing the TV industry or something. That was like a major complaint back in the 80s.
Yeah, I can see that. It's funny really, because you have something that was prominent at the time, like the 80s, for example, in which women wanted to be treated equally like men, and they would have things like Miss Magazine, and they would try to have all these fights against having equal pay, and you had shows like Mary Tyler Moore, and you would have shows like Murphy Brown, and all these other shows. So I think that something like that was pretty shocking. I don't know. I mean, when it comes to, TV, it's like, I don't think not a lot of things shock us anymore. I mean, there's already TV shows about gay people. There's already TV shows about, all equal amounts of, people in races and color. It's like, what could be the next show to kind of push the boundaries of, this show is completely taboo, but, it's going to change everything. Unless they have a show that focuses on people with maybe physical or mental disorders. And I'm not talking about those ones on TLC. I'm talking about like a real sitcom.
I can't think of anything. Yeah, I think that'll be the next logical step. I mean, I've seen some sort of tentative step towards it in the UK. A sketch show which was written completely and performed completely by people mental and physical abilities. And then there's also, most of it is a kind of crude in it, but I can see it getting more sophisticated as it goes along.
It's really interesting. I wish they have something like that around here. Another thing that we were discussing about was, a few months ago we had the London Olympics, the Summer Olympics in London.
Oh yeah, that annoyed me so much. I knew from the start when the Olympic Committee announced that the 2012 Olympics were going to be in London, the BBC would be like a child would be like a child who's had too much Ribena. Sorry, they wouldn't shut up about it, and I was right. I was sick by the time 2012 rolled around.
Wow.
Yeah.
They must have been really proud. Otherwise, if they wouldn't have been proud, they would have just stopped talking about it altogether.
Yeah, they even put a giant TV screen in Manchester city centre. Just that we kept going the Olympics continuously, especially whenever someone won a gold. God, it was unstoppable then.
And not to mention about the opening, the ones in which you have the history behind what, Great Britain was going through, all the way up to James Bond and the Queen parachuting off a plane.
Yeah, I do admit I found that funny, just because it's so surreal to see the Queen, stunt parachuter, jumping out of a helicopter to James Bond. But the actual sketch was a bit too twee, and I didn't really like that. I mean, I didn't like much of the Olympics so much. Just found it a bit too, that's all saccharine.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, they over two decades of music, really good ones as well. It's like you only had 3 songs created, and none of them was a really important band that influenced music today. And they lost over the 90s completely. Cool Britannia was going on.
No way.
Yeah. And that really knocked me. There was no Oasis, there was no Blur, there was no Stone Roses. Why did you just have the Stone Roses?
I don't know why they wouldn't have any Guns N' Roses.
Stone Roses.
You win some, you lose some, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing that made me most uncomfortable is the interpretive dance that's on the terrorist act. Because everyone knows the story. The day after it was announced that the London Olympics were going ahead, the 7/7 underground bombings happened.
Oh.
They had to, of course, get a tribute in of some sort. I totally understand. Yes, do that. But they did with interpretive friggin' dance. You don't do anything with interpretive dance.
Interpretive dance in the Olympics. That is so uncalled for.
Mm-hmm. But from what I heard, actually, NBC cut that and they cut to an interview with Michael Phelps instead because it was too it's not American enough.
Yeah,
and that's for a lot of people in the UK. They were even saying if like of course New York got it and they did something for 9/11, and the BBC instead decided to interview Rebecca Adlington for argument's sake. They'll be held to pay.
Yeah. And also another thing that came out around, the London Olympics was, that Little Mr. Bean reference when he was running in the water in that movie. What was it called again?
Chariots of Fire.
There you go. Yeah, Chariots of Fire.
Just had to get something with Chariots of Fire in there because that is pretty much the ultimate British sporting film. And it's a pretty good story, actually. The worst one is even that as well, where they refused to run on a Sunday because it's like a mega crispy. But it's definitely worth to watch that film.
Yeah, I enjoyed it quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just about a few months ago, Mr. Bean finally said, Rowan Atkinson finally said that he was retiring Mr. Bean. Yeah,
I suppose he thinks he's getting a bit too old to play the character like Mr. Bean. I can understand why.
He said that the reason why was because he feels that it'll be really sad for a 57-year-old man to play a child.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can understand where it's coming from. And I mean, he had a good run with Mr. Bean anyway.
Oh yeah, fantastic. 2 TV shows, an animated show, 2 movies. Big icon in Great Britain. So yeah, I can. He did a really great run, and it's nice to know that he retired the character in a more happier note. Yeah. And besides, he always, he still has, Johnny English, and he still has Blackadder, and he still has all these other characters. So, good for him.
Stand-up.
And he also has a stand-up. There you go.
Yeah.
So, great. And I remember writing an article in Manic Expression a few weeks ago talking about internet stereotypes. And I was referring to some people who are not from America, people who are known as the foreign guy, in which, everybody has like that one stereotype. And when I said about you, I just said, do British people always drink tea and have cookies and have bad teeth and always say pip pip cheerio and whatnot? So
yeah. So I mean, I am a bit of stereotype on tea. I'm addicted to tea.
Oh, you are.
Biscuits too. I do like their digestible, rich tea. The best biscuit, but just dunk it in. The bad teeth thing actually annoys me because it's totally unfounded. A lot of British people, the majority of them, apart from those on the Jeremy Bible show, tend to have all their teeth at least. And it's just that we just don't get what the Hollywood smart will find it scary.
Exactly, and you have nice teeth.
Yeah.
At least what's left over of it. I'm joking. He has all his teeth, and they're very nice.
They really are. Yeah, I mean, look, I do find some stereotypes hilarious, like especially the one that we all talk like Hugh Grant, also totally befuddled and things like that. And so, I mean, it's annoying when people think that there's no England ends at the M25 and just London.
Exactly. Everybody thinks that anybody from England lives in London, but you don't even live in London.
I don't even live within 100 miles of London.
Exactly, so there you go.
Yeah. So, it's definitely...
And people, it's kind of like the same thing with Florida. Everybody thinks I live right around the corner from Disneyland. I don't. I live 4 hours away from Orlando, so... I visit there from time to time, but no, I do not live near Disneyland, and it's not the happiest place on earth. No. Well, at least Florida isn't.
If you do Disneyland or Miami, at Florida.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, like, I just think that's like sort of a thing with the media, really, because London is more photogenic than other places in the UK, really.
Pretty much. Are there any other TV shows that you want to, talk about that you feel doesn't get talked about enough, or that you feel that Americans should, tune into, that you feel are underrated? Because, a lot of people, whenever they think of British TV shows, they think of Doctor Who, they think of, all those shows that they show on the BBC, they think of Downton Abbey. So, what do you think?
I'd recommend Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. It's I know Mike J did a retrospective on it recently, and it really needs to be seen to be believed, because it is one of the funniest things I have seen in ages. And it was just so treated badly by Channel 4, because they put a graveyard slot, they didn't advertise it, no one watched it, and it's only now gaining a cult following.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it's definitely worth a watch if you can find it. I think they're all on YouTube. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I'd also recommend a new show called My Mad Fat Diary. The show itself is not very good, but the soundtrack is phenomenal. So I'd recommend just watching it just for the soundtrack.
Neat. Hopefully they release the soundtrack on CD, or they have it uploaded on iTunes.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of it you can just tend to get off YouTube, because yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth a watch, just for the music alone, because although it does miss a few cues here and there, it does get a right of the period because it's set in like the mid-90s. Gets a lot of the whole further around Disney Blur and a lot of the clothing styles, the slang, even the locations look suitably 90s.
No kidding.
Mm.
Let's see what else. So, is there any, also, not to mention, on Manic Expression, you show up a couple of times at the Manic Expression digression session, and you also do blogs talking about things like James Bond. Just yesterday, you were posting something about a.k.a. Connery, in which, Sean Connery's brother plays as Sean Connery's brother, which is interesting. And the only place you can see it is at Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Yeah, it's that's the only way you can see it is watching the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode.
Is it that obscure that you can only see it on a TV show that pretty much makes fun of the worst B horror movies ever?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know about it until recently when I was reading the James Bond book called The Essential Bond, which is really good, and I recommend every Bond fan pick it up. And they turned out this film with Sean Connery's brother called Operation Kid Brother, Operation 007, blah, blah, blah. There's so many different names depending on the market. But I was like, that doesn't exist. And of course, I started the blog and started doing the parodies. I was like, I'm going to do this really obscure, really crap film. Watch it. Daily Motion, nothing. Mr. Cafe, nothing. You try YouTube because you never know. Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode, that's it. Oh, okay, that was it. Just anything to watch to see how bad it was. It was bad.
Oh, well, I love Mystery Science Theater 3000, and I can assure you, I will be watching it.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the best ones. It's got the best running joke in the whole series, I reckon. He keeps asking me my brother's in autograph.
Nice. And also, right before we conclude, there's also Incoherent Ramble, in which you basically just talk about whatever subject that's going on, such as the last one that you did talks about when you were reviewing the fact that the Nostalgia Critic is back, and you were talking about his review with Timothy Green. And then there's also other topics that you were discussing about, like movie reviews and talking about top 5s and top 10s. So where did you come up with the idea to do Incoherent Ramble?
Oh, after the Skype reel, which was the first Incoherent Ramble. But it's quite fun, and it's a great way to sort of get my opinions out, as well as practice like editing videos and things like that. With me, simple enough to do.
Well, your Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 was hilarious.
Oh, God. That one broke me. I actually had asking if I was all right after the first yell. And I was like, no, watch Twilight. No, oh, right, But I actually have the new Coherent Apple. It's about the return of Open Slide. That was come out sometime last week. And it's just basically a music review. And it's actually given me an idea for a new show. I'm thinking of doing a set of videos based around the Britpop music scene. So I'll be talking about the bands, any songs that I think are important. It'll basically be like a review show of any Britpop songs and songs that were either important in the founding of Britpop or were directly influenced by it.
Oh, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's not every day you get to hear about British music.
Yeah, well, old British music is mostly focused on stuff from the 90s, but if you talk about more modern, like Kasabian, Elbow, maybe music, I could probably throw them in now.
There you go. Oh, that'd be really good to hear. Is there anything else that you want to talk about right before we conclude it?
I don't really like to talk about Coronation Street. I hear that's really, really popular in the US. Is that true?
The Coronation?
Coronation Street.
Regarding about...
It's like a soap opera. It's one of the longest running ones in the world, and it's basically about the everyday life of the residents of in
I'm not really much of I'm not really much of that kind of soap opera fan, but apparently maybe it is. I don't know. Could be.
I hear it's. I have heard it's quite popular in the US, and that's surprising because, of course, it's set in fictional Manchester slash Salford suburb known as Weatherfield, and I thought that not like London English, it wouldn't be understood internationally because some like Manchester localisms are quite obscure, like no other place in England even uses that word.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's something to learn. I learned something new. I just learned something new today. So.
So you learn something new every day, and you think.
Exactly. So, I think that concludes another episode of Casual Chats. Kieron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me on.
And we hope that you would catch us in another episode of Casual Chats where we have another fun topic to discuss about.